Hey, Malvina.
Hello, Mark. How are you?
Hi. I'm really good, thank you. I'm really looking forward to today. It's
Yes.
such fun being with you on the last occasion for the number one start the episode of the life of a seer, and I've really been looking forward to it. In fact, I was thinking, Malvina, have we done the right thing by doing it every 2 weeks? I know we have to for such things, but it was like I want to do this next week. I want to get online next week.
Yes. I think is good because a lot of people, at least from the feedback that we've gotten,
Yes.
um, a lot of people have had the opportunity to watch it and rewatch it and process.
Yeah.
It's a very rich topic. So,
Yes.
but
It is.
I agree with you. I am excited. This
Yeah.
is a great
Yeah.
great subject.
Oh, it is. I think it's one of the things that we've talked about is timing, and we know that timing really is everything. It's crucial,
Yes.
and so often we get to look back on something and see how the timing is and was. So we really appreciate that. Nearly every live stream call that I do, the number one person is this person. Dave Champion, comes on a regular basis in nearly every of the live streams that I do. So he's first on, first up, and so we say hi to you, Dave. It's good to see you. And we've got some other people starting to filter in, catch up with us, and so we've been talking about timing. Last week, Malvina, last week we did an introduction. We talked a
Yes.
little bit about um, the seer season. Probably we talked a little bit
Yes.
about some things, and one of the things that I felt came out of that, but it was also leading up to that, and you started some of it, but when we've been talking about knowledge, knowledge being something that we get, prophetically. We live in an information age,
Yeah.
people used to go to church to get information. They'd go to church to get something that the pastor was going to share, and that was their primary area now. And of course, that's
Yeah.
not the case anymore. You can get so much from the web, so much from somewhere. So it's not that you have to go to a place to just get information, because you can get information all around about you.
Yes. Yes.
And so we live in this time, and we saw the words of knowledge in the last 20 years become something that was strongly emphasized. And
Yes.
then the beginning of this decade, we've talked about, and some of the prophets have talked about wisdom. Wisdom being the application of the knowledge.
Yeah.
So it's not just something. It's just not enough just to declare something, right?
Yep.
But you have to also put it into place. You've got to actually do it. And then the other one is a spirit of understanding. So, spirit of wisdom and a spirit of understanding. And I think that's what we're experiencing, and that's what other people are experiencing. We're starting to see, and the Lord's bringing forth some understanding. And so, people that have been misunderstood. Last time we talked about dealing with shame, and we talked about dealing with confusion. Those two
Yes.
things from Isaiah 61 verse 7.
Yeah.
Um, and so today we're going to talk a little bit more about some of all of that, right?
Yes. And you know what, Mark? One thing I wanted to mention, because it's important for those that are going to be watching later as well, and that are
Mm-hmm.
watching now. I believe this is a season where the spirit of discernment is going to be awakened. If you look historically at the ninth spirit in First Corinthians 12, you have the healing and
Mm-hmm.
tongues and interpretation
Mm-hmm.
of tongues and so on and so on. We have seen historically, and I have some dates here. You have the spirit of wisdom and prophecy with Wimber in 1980. You have the faith movement in 1970 with Kenneth Copeland. I mean, there was a huge movement. There was healing and knowledge with Oral Roberts. You can go historically in Wikipedia and find a movement of all those gifts except the spirit of discernment. And what you just described about having a wisdom to understand what's being downloaded, I believe this is the time, this is our timing. So for those of you that are seers, I want to encourage you to know that even though it can be a little bit overwhelming and sometimes oppressive even, and gives you lots of burden, it is our time. So we've been preparing our whole life for this. And I do believe the next generation is a generation that has a lot more discernment than the older generation. So they feel more, they see more, but the problem is there is no understanding on what it is we are seeing. So how do we see, what is a seer? So hopefully we'll cover some of those topics in this show, because having a revelation, or having, let me put it this way, having something that you feel or had a dream and not understanding what that is for can really mess you up. But yet God can use that in an amazing, amazing way to guide you or guide somebody else, because a lot of time it's not even for you. But understanding is huge.
So both of us have got some things to share, not just about characteristics or profiles, but even things that just recently happened to us. So you went to Portland just recently to minister. This is last weekend. So tell us about what you were sensing or feeling as you headed to was there.
Absolutely. I love Portland. So if anybody from Portland is watching or watches later, welcome everybody. I love that region. And most people ask me, why do you go there? It's not good, and again, as a seer, to go there, there's a lot of spiritual action around you, good and bad. There's a lot of angelic, good and bad. And it can be very overwhelming. So when I landed, I had this very heavy feeling on my head, which is unusual. It was something I couldn't describe. It was not a headache. I wasn't dizzy. It wasn't like the airplane or the barometric pressure or whatever. It was just, I had this, like I had a bucket on my head full of rocks like this. And I kept saying, what is it? Is it good? Is it bad? I couldn't judge it. And my friend Lisa Gillette, who may join later, saw me and said, oh, you have a column over your head, and it's a gold column. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, I really like, there she is. She just logged in, Lisa. So she can probably give us comments. She saw this thing over my head. She says, I saw a pillar on your head. Well, I had been having this feeling for 2 days, and I was really feeling super heavy. But the moment she said she saw a gold pillar over my head, and she even found somebody who was once had a pillar over his head, all of a sudden the burden and the heaviness that I felt faded, because now I understood what is the heaviness that I feel. It has a purpose. The Lord was depositing something on my head that I had no concept for, but if the Lord is doing it, I'm okay. So that's an example of feeling something that you start popping pills. I have a headache, I feel dizzy, and you don't know what it is. But
similar for me too this week. So I had several conversations. So my whole week has been, I live on Zoom, so I do a lot of Zoom meetings with people one-on-one, and sometimes some groups. And I had a couple of incidents during this week where I had some calls with some people which were fairly heavy content, fairly heavy. Now, I'm a multitask person. I can do lots of things at once. I thrive in that environment. What else? But I'd had these calls, and I went to my wife yesterday and I said, I am overwhelmed. And in my head, I'm thinking, why are you overwhelmed? Like you do this number of things that you've done today before breakfast. It's like it doesn't fit. It doesn't. But I'm still feeling this sense of being like overwhelmed, and I'm feeling like I don't like this feeling. It's overwhelming. It's overwhelmed feeling. And of course, when you know something, or when you feel something, but your head can tell you that you shouldn't be feeling this way,
Yes.
you could be reluctant to share that with anybody. You can
Correct.
be reluctant. You're like, I'm silly, I'm crazy, I'm weird. What's going on? Like I know the answer. I know the things that I would tell everybody else. But I was on a call this morning with my friend Jeremy, and we'll have Jeremy is one of the guests that we'll have on a regular basis. So hopefully he'll be on next month. Out of Columbus, Ohio, very good friend of ours, and a seer. And so I was just sharing this with him, and he said to me, Mark, you are feeling the overwhelmed feeling, or the feeling that you're feeling is overwhelmed of other people's overwhelmedness.
Correct.
He said that you are experiencing, and as soon as he said that, as soon as he said it, I got understanding, and as soon as I got understanding, my whole demeanor changed. Everything was in me changed because he defined something that was going on. He gave some clarity. He gave some context.
Correct.
He gave some understanding, and I felt understood.
Yes.
I felt like I understood, and he then said to me, and see, because we're on a Zoom, he said, see, your whole face has changed.
Yes.
Your demeanor has changed. You've gone from being sort of having something happen to you into a place where you understand. And so I think that this is a key thing that we don't we maybe not paid attention to, that there's a reason that throughout Proverbs it talks about wisdom and understanding.
Yes.
We hear about a spirit of wisdom and a spirit of understanding. Yes. And I don't think that we've paid the attention to understanding. I don't think that leaders have truly understood. And another thing is too that I think that seers are the best people to understand seers.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And sometimes it's not even understanding. Like I said, with my girlfriends in Portland this weekend, it's so beautiful as we get together. We're strong seers, a large majority of us. And as we sit around the table with a cup of coffee, we start talking about one thing. One says, I had that dream, and that dream explains what you just saw. And the other one says, oh, no, I had that vision. And all of a sudden, it's a puzzle that starts coming together, all the little pieces. And then you realize that dream that was burdening you so much, it wasn't something heavy. It was just a piece of a puzzle for somebody else, But one thing, Mark, as you were talking about understanding and gaining understanding, one of the things that I've come to establish as I train people and talk about being a seer, the seer, so I said it in the previous episode. All seers are prophets, but not all prophets are seers. So in the Hebrew, a prophet is a nabi, N-A-B-I, is the Hebrew word prophet. They bubble up. Okay, so a prophet says, thus says the Lord, this is going to happen. And you send me a couple of words. You give me words. There is no explanation, no nothing. You just bubble up, typed it up, and I receive that word. Well, I take that word and now I have to process. A seer, you see a thing, like my girlfriend saw that pillar over my head. Well, now it requires a seeking. It's a slower process than the Nabi prophet or the actual spoken prophet. A seer has a feeling. Well, you don't know what the feeling is. Could be a headache. You have an emotion. You don't know what it is. You feel like crying. And I speak to the men that will watch this. Cry. If you're a seer, be emotional. Don't worry about what people. A lot of the time, people have to see you cry because God is using your tears to minister to others. If you keep it to yourself because you're feeling vulnerable, then we don't have the actual impact of the revelation. So it is
Yes.
a very slow process, or a slower process for a seer
Yes.
to gain understanding. And that comes
Yes.
with intimacy, because
Yes.
it's like a parable. You
Yeah.
see bears walking down the street. Okay, what does that mean? Now you got to go figure out what's the Lord saying. Why that street? Why the bear? Why
Yes.
me? So
Yes.
it requires it's a process. So we're not
Yes.
going to figure it out immediately and leave it alone, or give the word. Uh,
Hmm.
Warning for seers: don't go saying everything you see. It could
Yes.
be catastrophic. A lot of the
Yes.
time, it's just for you to steward it in your heart, and
Yes.
that is one of the things that a seer needs to become aware. There is a
Yes.
maturity that comes where you have to know how to carry the
Yes.
emotions. You can get really moody
Yes.
because you see the person and you say, "Ooh, they look creepy," and you don't want to talk to them. And the Lord
Yes.
saying, "No, you go have the conversation." So in
Yes.
those situations, you don't react out of your emotions. You have to wait, so that there's a
Yeah.
slower process that
Yes.
takes place.
Yes.
So
And so one of the things that you mentioned, and I find that this is the case, and maybe it's not the same for everybody, but I've heard enough people tell me it's
yeah.
the case. When we with the emotions, it's like you see something, like you just said, you see it, and then you have to process it, or you have to um, have wisdom of how to communicate that. It's the same with emotions, because usually seers feel something first. That's the first thing. They feel it. They
Mhm.
feel disappointment, or they feel control, or they feel this, or they feel something. And for a man, can I say this? For a man, that can be troubling, or and a lot of men are misunderstood, or misinterpreted, because we feel something, we're
Yeah.
feeling something, and like you just said, if you don't let go of some things, like if sadness was welling up with you and you don't cry, you don't let it out,
Oh,
then that's really more difficult to you. And and a lot of society around about it says, well, man, you got to be the strong,
men don't
you
cry.
like men don't cry, it's okay for the women because they're more in touch with their emotions.
Yeah.
But you see, as seers, we will receive something often in the feeling arena, in that emotional stuff.
Yeah.
We feel something. Sometimes you'll feel it because you then will start to have to put it together. Sometimes you, like we said last week, you'll feel something that you picked up days ago,
Yes.
right? And so that when you start to get understanding, that I think is the key that unlocks things.
Yes. Yes. I call it Velcro. So a lot of the time you're at the grocery store, and
Mm-hmm.
for me, that this is another example I can share. I can be at the store, and at my
Mm-hmm.
bakery, there's something in the bakery. I go and, oh, I don't. It's dark. All of a sudden, like the
Yeah.
lights go down. It's a very
Mm-hmm.
physical thing. And
Mm-hmm.
you're just shopping. You're not necessarily in tune with the spiritual realm that's around you. And that's another thing that I would like to mention. As a seer, the spiritual realm is around you, whether you like it or not. It's not
Yeah.
selective, and it's not all good and it's not all bad. It's both. So you have
Mm-hmm.
good angels, bad angels. You have good things, bad things, good emotions, bad emotions, plus every person shopping with you at the store.
Yes.
So you are really a bouncing everything is touching you, because
Yeah.
we're not limited by your body or your space. In the spirit, you
Yes.
can
Yeah.
go and touch people. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you can get home, and that happens to me. I love to shower. It's a very soothing thing, because it calms my skin, because I've been bumped by all these spiritual things that I don't have any understanding. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes 2 days later, I'm still going, why is it that I'm feeling? But I have to remember, oh, it was that bakery. I remember, oh, I forgot. So there are certain things that it's not for me to judge, by the way. And I said this, I repeat the same thing. Not everything you see is for you to go share or do a deliverance of my bakery. I just have to understand, why is the Lord revealing those things to me? The other thing is, just because you saw it doesn't mean it's yours. The spiritual realm is around you, and you will be in touch. Actually, here on this call, we are bumping on each other spirits, yours, mine,
Yes. Yes.
whoever is giving comments. We don't have to see each other. Our spirits can go really far. Okay, they're not contained by this body. So the spirit is really interacting at all times. So because I felt it doesn't mean it's mine for me to interpret for me. It may be for somebody else. But also, you don't necessarily, I feel bad, so I'm just going to go on a warfare activity, which in the past, that used to be very misunderstood. If you feel bad, there must be something wrong with you. So we need to start getting in understanding and discerning, is it me? Is it me, Lord? Do I need to refocus? Who is it? Why did you let me see it? Is it just noise? Because there is a lot of noise in the spiritual realm. But also, as we interact with people, let's say you're in a conference or in a church and you feel something strange. What am I to do with that? Do I pray? Do I let it sit? Is that you, Lord? Could be something else. And sometimes we get very distracted. I like to compare it, if anybody's familiar with that movie with Mel Gibson, as What Women Want. He was able to hear all women talking at the same time, and he can drive you crazy. And I compare it as a practical, as a funny example. That's what I feel sometimes. I can see everybody's spirit in a room, and I can be very overwhelmed unless you bridle your gift.
Yes.
So as we have a comment, I think.
Yes, Lisa's just saying something here. I mean, we've got a few other people that have turned in too, but Lisa's saying, good point. In my immaturity, I've been distracted from what is mine to address by things that are not mine.
Not mine. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think also too, when we own things that are not ours, maybe that's another way of saying it too. I think that because it feels so real, it feels like it's mine.
Yeah.
Like I was sharing you before, I felt overwhelmed, and so I was trying to figure out, what do I do with my overwhelm? Why am I overwhelmed? Why? It wasn't mine, but it felt like mine because it was affecting me. It was touching me, and I've learned this lesson so many times, but it's just we keep learning it.
Of course.
We keep going. Now, one of the things that we've identified from characteristics or things that can really affect seers is anxiety.
Yes.
So can you talk about that?
Yes. So what is a seer? Before we get into the anxiety. So as I described earlier, you have a spiritual realm bumping. Whoa, constantly. Okay. So a lot of the time you have no understanding, like you felt overwhelmed. Okay.
Yes.
So we start thinking, what's wrong with me? I don't feel good. I cannot rest. I cannot read. I cannot focus, especially children. For those of you that have children that sometimes are finicky. The scratching, they can't sit still. My kids used to tap. It was like a soothing exercise, and they drive you crazy. You're like, stop. So it can be very, very overwhelming. So a lot of people that have not learned to bridle the gift or to discern or gain understanding. And by the way, this gift comes without repentance. You're born this way. So, it's not like you've gone through a process of schooling to learn this. You're born like John the Baptist from my mother's womb. He knew the Messiah was in front of him. So he saw him, but he wasn't there. He was just in his mother's belly and he jumped. Okay, so from the belly, you start feeling your mother, your whatever's in your household, music, this, that. So that's a constant stimulation. When not stewarded properly, it can really become an overwhelming stimulation remember, this is a spiritual, we're body, soul, and spirit. Is the spirit is moving, is not going to stop. It has nothing to do with your soul, but your soul cannot comprehend what's happening. So it triggers anxious thoughts. I don't know what to do with this. This is driving me crazy. I want it to stop. So we have things like anxiety or panic. A lot of people panic because they don't want the feeling. I need to be calm. I need to do this. And now you can go into a conference room that used to happen to me when I was in business. You see everybody in that room and you go, oh my goodness, they're going to eat me. Now the meeting hasn't even started, but you already know what's coming because you've already saw the heart of these people sitting in that room. Okay, so you can be in a panic, sweating, and you don't know what's going on. How do I calm that down? Well, I've seen OCD, for example, in that same anxiety, in the desire to calm down the anxiety. A lot of kids will develop in adults repetitive behavior that they can control. So they become very, very compulsive because I can probably control my pens, and put them all in order. Or my shoes. My kids used to wear the same color, same. It was something that soothed them, fabric, sensory, because it calms them down. So those things you mentioned, anxiety, it can take many forms. It's very emotional. It's a very emotional gift. So when not steward right, it can distort itself into a reactionary mode that causes panic and nervousness.
So it could be like a panic attack that doesn't that occurs and you don't know why, but you just feel this panic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And again, remember, it's a very intimate connection unless you know you're seeing. Okay. So let's say you're a person that have anxiety or don't sleep. A lot of them can't sleep because the spirit doesn't stop because you're in bed. So you're still receiving signals. A lot of people don't sleep, then they get nervous, then they're anxious. They need to go to work the next day. It's a ripple effect. The first thing that I ask them is, okay, tell me your routine. Because a lot of the time, the pattern of the places they've been at, they're absorbing a lot of it. And then they have, I have sleeping problems. Well, wait, why? Okay. And so those things can cause other problems that shouldn't be. It's a gift from God. That's God speaking to us through sensory, really.
Yeah. So probably, can I put it in another word? What I think is an important thing, and is to consider the connection between cause and effect.
Yes.
Right. And I think we live in a world where there's a disconnect between those two things. And so we just try and treat the symptom because we don't want that symptom. And when we begin to understand, okay, because I'm doing this, or because I've been here, or because of this has taken place, then this is what's occurring, which helps build understanding.
Exactly. Yes. So, and also, the other thing, Mark, regarding that is, especially with children, adults, we can dialogue with ourselves and journal and so on. But with children, a lot of the time, moms would say, my daughter gets really rebellious and angry and, and whatever. Well, teenagers tend to do those kinds of things. But when there is a repetitive behavior, you ask them, do a little list and say, where have you been? So right before they get weird, okay, or they start, my kids used to call it the weird feeling. Mom, we have this weird feeling. We don't like it, because they had no language for it. But the thing is that weird feeling only happened after certain exposure. Either they were at a friend's house or a teacher or a pastor. We had that too. There were things that you would never think is going to cause an opposite effect. But yet, since they couldn't comprehend it, understand it, we'll be talking about understanding in this episode, they didn't understand that this is my pastor. I shouldn't be seeing that. So what creates is a brain conflict. What the spirit is showing me doesn't match what my brain is saying. He should be my pastor. He should be amazing. Well, that wasn't the case. So there is a frustration. Now I don't understand anything. And then they go ballistic. And then you say, why are they being so angry? Why are they so anxious? Why are they so rebellious? I had one that would throw up every Sunday. So why is he only throws up on Sunday?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not like a physical condition that we have to take him to the doctor. The moment you remove that stimulation, he was able to, then we figured it out. Oh, okay. There's this common denominator that's causing this.
Yes.
So yes, you can find trends sometimes. When are you anxious? When are you panicking? When are you super stressed? Like you had all these Zoom calls. Well, if you're handling heavy conversations, difficult conversations, sometimes the people, they can be the best people in the whole world, but they're burdened. Well, you will feel the burden too. There is no, even if it's Zoom, in the spirit, there is no separation. Yes.
A friend of mine had said to me, in order to deal with this, don't fight the feeling.
Exactly.
But engage your heart. And I think that that's a part of what we're talking about too, is that bring a connection between what has occurred and what. Don't be quick to possess every feeling that happens to you as your own. You know, as Lisa says, you know, don't take it and make it every single one of those feelings as personal. In fact, actually, I suggest to people that they not in effect rejecting every feeling, but don't own every single feeling, and because most of the feelings feel like they're yours.
Of course, right? That's the language. That's what seers need to understand. You are feeling it.
Yeah, you're feeling it because so don't be quick to accept every single feeling that comes and start to say, oh, why am I feeling this? It's better to actually saying, okay, so whose is this? And that's a good question to ask the Lord.
Yes.
Who's this feeling? Whose is it? Is it mine?
Yes.
You know, and I think that's engaging your heart and finding out, well, you know, whose it is. Because like you said, you could be in the store, for instance, and you're in this environment of so many feelings and so sorts of things, and there'll be ones that will hit you and stick like Velcro, as you said. And you may not feel it right then, but you may be feeling it sometime later.
Absolutely.
And so, you know, one of the things that I think fits with all in this, if I can sort of segue that, is that Proverbs 3:31 talks about finding wisdom, you know, and I think that lines up with, you know, in the New Testament, we were told if you lack wisdom, ask for it, you know, and believe that you get it, which is finding. I think that's finding wisdom. But it then goes on to say, gain understanding. And when I think of gain, and if you look at that particular Hebrew word, it talks a lot more about securing or, you know, adding to. I think that gaining understanding comes over a period of time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, and you know, Mark, one thing I wanted to add is as a clarification for those that will watch later. You were talking about feelings a lot, but in seeing, so you know, it's interchangeable. There are many forms and visionary states that a seer can have. So it's important that we are more feelers. Like Mark is more of a feeler. He's emotional. I've seen him in action. You know, he absorbs it all, and then he gets that face. So you can tell he's feeling something. But for example, I get tons of visions. So I'll see movies that pass, and sometimes I'm totally paralyzed as I see those things. Now, I can't teach you how to have a vision, which I think has been the error that a lot of the body of Christ has gone into, the school of the seer. I'm going to show you how to see. Listen, you either see or you don't. So, you know, we cannot, and we will do a little bit of in the episodes, the difference between revelation and divination. I can force my imagination to have all kinds of images in my head, vain imaginations. That is not what we're talking about. We're talking about some people have visions, some people have dreams, some people feel, some people smell, some people hear. So seeing can take many different forms, you know, of its manifestation. So we're not just saying you have to feel it.
Yes.
Some people can see better. I see colors. The Lord speaks to me in color.
Hmm.
He'll give me different images.
Hmm.
Sometimes I don't know. It could be a billboard on the highway, and then I
Yes.
go back and it doesn't look the way I saw it the first time around. But in that moment, I saw something. So a lot
Yes.
of the times is it could be a trend. Like I see one
Yes.
image and then I see another image and then I see another image and then I realize, oh, I see you're showing me something. So it
Yeah.
comes in many different forms. So I don't want to box it in the feeler
Oh yeah. Yeah.
because it's more common to feel because a lot of us are not trained. So it's a I don't want to call it immature, but it's an easier way for the Lord to get your attention because if it hurts, you're going to look.
Well,
But
can
go ahead.
let me take exactly what you're saying and just turn it on the other way from somebody who is such a feeler as
Yes.
you made mention. When we use the word term seer, I think it's actually a word that comes from the perspective of heaven.
Yes.
So when we
Exactly.
think of seer, we think of eyes and being able to see with the eyes or the eyes of the spirit.
Exactly.
But seers or being able to discern or see or feel or it's feeling or it's like you said I've been around people who have smelt sicknesses
Oh,
or smelt certain things, and
yes.
it's a distinctive thing that they have, and they are seers.
Yes. Yes.
It's because they're seeing with their sense of smell.
Yes. Absolutely.
I see visions, I see things, I
Yes.
see a lot through feeling.
Yeah.
So that's how I see, and I think that what we are attempting to do is to broaden the understanding
Yes.
of what seers are, and so
Absolutely.
it you are far you do see,
Hmm.
as in being able to see dreams and visions or what else, far more than I do.
Yeah, it's just a different way.
It's just a
I
different
wouldn't
way.
say more. Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. I want people to understand that it can come in so many forms. Another way you mentioned smelling disease. For me, if somebody has knee pain, I get knee pain. If somebody has, they can't breathe, I feel like I'm out of breath. So a lot of the
Yeah.
times it's very physical because I'm
Yes.
feeling, the what the person is
Yes.
going through. So it's a language. It's like tongues. We don't know what the
Yeah.
tongues are saying, but
Yes.
we are feeling these things or seeing it in the spirit or
Yeah.
sensing. And then sometimes it can manifest, and I think it's a brain condition because if the brain doesn't understand what the spirit is revealing to the body, people get gag and get dizzy, and they're going to throw
Mhm.
up, and a lot of
I
people
th-
some people.
yeah.
I used to pass out. I'm over that.
Yeah.
It was too
I
much
think
information.
yeah. I think one of the things that we're highlighting here is the importance
Yes.
to to develop some people that we can relate to, who understand us.
Yeah.
And it's certainly something that we were wanting to do with this live stream, and
Yes.
it's something that we are looking towards. How do we develop this into places where we can develop more communities and
Correct.
connections with people? So if people have got ideas or thoughts, we really would love to hear that. But we will be looking to develop some ways that we can look at some of these subjects in themselves, because we have a lot of subjects, and hit more intentional or more time on a
Yes.
particular subject. One of the things that I heard you saying, and I've done this a little bit with people who are seers, is that you often talked about their birth, the birth of a
Yeah.
seer. So
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. I don't know. Throughout the years, I put in an effort. My kids are very strong seers. I'm a strong seer, and we went through the ringer. It was like a mess of a house because though nobody sleeps. They were colicky babies. They were difficult babies, and you don't know what to do. And you yourself is seeing things, and it gets complicated. So a household can really be thrown off by a seer. But I believe throughout the years, I've done a lot of research in the subject,
Yeah.
biblically, but also practically. I've dealt with many, many seers. So I put in an effort to gather statistics, to look at numbers and how many of my seers have had difficult birth. And it's amazing, amazing. I would say, I'm going to say, to be conservative, 90%, but I probably can say 95% of seers will have a traumatic birth.
Yeah.
Either the pregnancy is super difficult, the child is going to pass, the doctor says he's not going to live, there is a compromised birth, or the mother had difficulty conceiving. They're bearing, like Elizabeth. She had a seer, John the Baptist, in her womb. So it becomes a conflict. And I believe, this is my theology, so take it with a grain of salt. I believe the enemy knows the power of a
Yes.
seer. And
Yes.
he knows that if this baby is born, he is going to
Yes.
see me.
Yes.
Now, he's going to try to corrupt that
Yes.
person or that baby
Yes.
or that birth any way. And so, most experiences that I've heard, my own, with my own children, you have
Yes.
very difficult birth, out of time, the doctor doesn't make it, they don't do the C-section, the cord is strapped around the neck, the is not your typical, birth at home in a tub, and we all
Mm-hmm.
sing, songs as he's born. Is usually traumatic. A lot of them, a large majority of them, tend to be preemies, born out of time.
Mm-hmm.
Also, they're not healthy. They can't drink this, they cannot drink that. They cry, cry, cry. You can't soothe them. They're sensory in the sense that their clothing affects them.
Mm-hmm.
They develop conditions because,
Mm-hmm.
by the way, they don't have a junior spirit. They can see from their mother's womb. So
Yes.
my son, for example, my oldest son, I think he saw everything, since he was a baby, and he couldn't reconcile all that was around him. So he was
Mm-hmm.
constantly in conflict, uncomfortable, crying, or sick. He always sick. He always have ear things and throwing up. So, it's a baby that's not, it's not the baby you take with a pretty outfit to the park and take a picture. You're trying to shield him from everything so he's comfortable. So from that moment, you don't have a normal, let's take the photo up because he's throwing up. Okay. He probably saw the photographer and didn't like it. So, it was a very strong, extreme gift. And unfortunately, these babies, they huge nightmares, had huge night terrors, but they were really God. Now that I look back after all I've learned, I wish I knew what I know now, because my
Mm-hmm.
son's life would have been very different, but it was how I learned. One of the things that happen is they'll make vows. I don't want this. I don't want to see. I don't want to
Yes.
dream. I
Yes.
hate this. This
Yes.
is, why would God give me this? So,
Yes.
what happens is it corrupts very early. I do believe seeing is a redemptive gift that comes to rectify problems. We are here
Yes.
to help, collaborate with God to
Yes.
address issues in the spirit. That
Yes.
doesn't mean my son has to go fix it. It means if he tells
Yeah.
me and I take it apostolically, we can do something. But we're not structured like that in the church today. So when you talk about difficult birth,
Yeah.
yes, a large majority of them will have difficult conceptions, difficult birthing, difficult baby time, and then school. They'll have learning issues, a lot of them. And the reason for this is not that your son needs to be diagnosed with ADHD, is because in the spirit, you're constantly stimulated. And now you got to
Yeah.
listen to the teacher. Well,
Yeah.
I'm over here, yeah,
Yeah.
squirrel. Where the girls make fun of me because I'll change subject. I'm thinking about something else. So if you're a child in third grade, you're
Mm-hmm.
probably not going to be paying attention. So you're going to be diagnosed as the kid who's always moving,
Yes.
crazy, can't read, cannot do the math problems,
Yeah.
and they're highly creative as well. So he's the kid
Yeah.
making the little stick with the, you know,
Yes.
with a piece of paper that he was supposed to do the math problem, and he's flying an airplane. So it is a makeup, it is a DNA in those kids that gets them in a lot of trouble, and parents a lot of times don't know what to do with them because they don't fit in the industrialized model of education. So
That's right. And I think one of the things that we do know is that rejection is a powerful tool that the enemy uses,
cancel you out.
and he wants to cancel out. And at the same time, he wants people to use that tool.
Yeah.
He wants to convince people to reject the gift that's been given to them, to reject the call that's on there because it's so difficult. And again, we come back to understanding what will make a lot of difference in the body of Christ is if every person that is on this call, who has ever been or whether hear this, begins to help other people understand what's going on. We can create a movement of understanding, of spiritual understanding, of helping people to understand that they're normal, or understanding that they're normal for the gifting that's on their life, or to understand what's going on, or help people to be able to connect cause and effect. Some of the things that you learn on here, some of the things that we think, and of course, each of these, there's so much information that we can't bring it all to one of these calls. But what we want to do is to stir up some things. So the enemy wants to trick people into rejecting the call, rejecting the gift, rejecting who God has called you to be. And we're here to release acceptance. We're here to do the opposite of that and to bring acceptance to people, and a sense of acceptance and a feeling of acceptance and an experience of acceptance. And so that's what we want to release. We want to release that today to people. No matter what your birth was, no matter what your experience was through schooling, we want to release that acceptance that goes beyond the specifics. Right? And to release that deep sense, that deep truth of acceptance.
Yes. And one thing, Mark, in addition to acceptance is also a community. One of the things that most seers, they isolate themselves because, again, we don't want to feel anybody. We don't want to sense anything. And we just want to be alone in my home by myself. And that way I don't hurt, and which is another lie. But there is also one thing for me as I travel and interact with a lot of seers. I've come to understand, like, for example, I get a lot of visions that I don't know what they mean. So I track them all down. But as I interact with a lot of the seers, I get the piece that I'm missing. I get the understanding that I'm missing. So community for me is key to understand what I'm seeing. I gave the example of the beginning of the episode is, I couldn't understand why my head felt the way it did, but somebody saw it and was able to complete the picture. So see, if we don't have community of people that understand dream interpretation or visionary states, as I said earlier, a trance is not something to be scared of. Peter had a trance, and it's the only way the Lord could get through his head. So understanding all those levels and having people that know those things, or at least have some kind of sense, they're not going to think you're weird or you're mystical, you're this or that. No, you're just moving in the spirit. So those, to me, community, not only acceptance, but also understanding that you're not alone. There is a large community. And I'm not talking about let's get together and do an ascension. I'm not talking about that. I am talking about people that on day to day, this is something that doesn't go turn on or off. And you don't fabricate it or make it happen. This is God releasing to you when he desires something. And what do we do with that? And we talked about birth and babies. I really feel for the parents out there that have children in this situation, that because it can be very draining and very painful sometimes, because your child's not going to have the birthday party like everybody else. But accepting that and embracing your child for who God made him to be can be life changing. Sorry, I interrupted you, Eric.
No. I was just thinking, if I remember way back, which is a long time, my school reports would be something
Oh,
like needs to pay attention, easily distracted, all of those sorts of things.
yeah.
So I understand that, but what I do want to say to people today, listening right now, what else is receive acceptance, but also fight isolation, fight, because that's another thing the enemy wants to do, is to isolate you.
Yeah.
Now, I know that doesn't just mean being everywhere amongst every people.
No.
But,
Wisdom. Use
yeah,
wisdom.
define, like, really discover the people that you do need to cultivate and to bring some attention. Because sometimes we just need to call somebody up and say, tell me what I need to hear. Or, like you were describing about somebody and my call this morning,
Yes.
with Jeremy, that Jeremy gave me understanding.
Yes.
And in a moment, just click like that, things changed.
One word.
Because I got understanding. I understood what was going on. And that's my biggest frustration sometimes, is when I don't understand.
Yeah.
And usually that happens when I'm isolated or I'm not amongst people. But develop some people who you can call up and say, and you don't need to give them details. Just say, tell me what I need to hear.
Yeah.
Tell me what, not necessarily what you want to hear, but what you need to hear.
Yes.
Or somebody that's going to give you some understanding about what's going on. And
Yes.
one of the tricks of the enemy is to tell you that you are silly, you are weird. And often the things you already know in your head, some things, but you have to activate it. You have to hear it from somewhere else. You
Absolutely.
have to hear it from another voice or another gifting or another accent. Like Malvina, like your accent. I mean, I don't have an accent, but you do.
No, that's what you said.
That's what I say.
Yeah. Now, one thing, Mark, before, I know we're getting to the end, but I wanted to also add, seers tend to be highly creative. If you think of creativity, and I'm not talking about art, although that's included. When you think of a person that's innovative, entrepreneurial, and if you were to look in history, the Steve Jobs and the people who come up with these inventions and these kinds of things are usually in this category. And I believe it is because they're able to tap into something outside of them, okay? And they can get the inspiration. So in order for you to paint something, okay, so I have some of my paintings back there. Well, that didn't exist. I saw that in my mind. Okay, so it's a way of seeing, and then you can manifest it on earth. I do believe that we talk about the awakening or the revival of the spirit of discernment. I believe that this is going to be a very innovative season if the seers get developed, matured, become who they are, because they're going to be able to see heavenly designs and heavenly things that are coming from heaven, innovative ideas that can be dropped. But a lot of the times you need somebody who can see them, like Moses saw the tabernacle in detail. I'm talking with specific colors, measurements, and so on and so on. That's a seer. So, it's not just, I have a feeling. No. Some seers can be very, very accurate. So the highly creative, the highly entrepreneurial, the highly in tune, as they develop, they can become really amazing. So skills like, drawing and writing things down and so on also release a lot of that burden when it gets too heavy. If you notice, artists can be funny too. But it's because they're emotionally engaged with their visions and their art. So the same happens to people that are very entrepreneurial. They don't fit in the box, but it's necessary for the new designs that God's going to drop in the coming days. So that's another encouragement to seers. There are seers out there that have ideas that are third heaven ideas that need to be manifested here on earth. These are blueprints that need to be dropped. So
Yes.
it's part of what's coming.
So let me perhaps finish with something that was said to me this morning. Don't fight the feelings,
No.
but engage your heart. Be wise. Be wise with who you talk to or what you release,
Yes.
and gain understanding. Gain understanding, and understanding. Um, once you are made for understanding, by the way, because you're made in the image of God, and you're made for wisdom, you're made for
Yeah.
knowledge, you're made for all of these things. So gain understanding, gain the understanding, and that's what we're aiming to do. And so,
Yeah.
Malvina, we once again, I've had a great time being
Yes.
together. Great time of being able to share this, and we know that it's the right timing. We know that there's
Yes.
a real right timing for people. So whether you're listening to this now or whether you're listening to this later, we encourage you to receive not just the words that we're speaking, but receive the things that we're releasing into you, which is understanding, the things that we're releasing to you, which is insight, the things that we're releasing to you through this. When we talked about acceptance today, you can receive acceptance at a level and a dimension, at a place that you've never experienced in your life, simply by saying yes to that, simply
Yes.
by saying, I come into agreement with it. And so we want to bless you today. We want to bless everybody that's going to listen to this into the future. If you, it's available on Insight Now on the YouTube or on Facebook. It's available on podcasts such as Spotify and some other any of the other podcasts that are available. And so, we want to say thank you, Malvina. We hope pretty soon to have another guest, our friend Jeremy, and that could be next week. We could have the three amigos next week.
That's right. So
Anything you want to